Now, it's not often we can look to a criminal trial overseas and use it to actually demonstrate almost everything that is going wrong in the Western world. But this is one such time. The trial I'm referring to is that of a young man named Kyle Rittenhouse. He's the chap who went to defend life and liberty against the Black Lives Matter rioters, ended up shooting 2 people dead and injuring another one. The episode received blanket media coverage, all of it condemning the young man and using him as an example of white supremacy and systemic racism. He was everything that was wrong with the system. And this was the same media who, while cities were being smashed up behind them, declared on camera that the riots were peaceful. Now, that cover-up, it was an indictment on the Democratic propaganda channels that were pushing it. And quite frankly, the enabling by Democrat politicians in America was nothing short of shameful. They excused the inexcusable in their rush to exploit a political opportunity. But that pales in comparison to their treatment of Kyle Rittenhouse. Joe Biden branded him a white supremacist, and the media accused him of making white supremacist hand signals while at a bar. Now, that's the same hand gesture that Biden himself has used. So you're starting to see a pattern here. There are hypocrites everywhere. The media and the political class are as dishonest as each other. Here's a US congressman and former lawyer, a Democrat of course, condemning the prison industrial complex in June last year, but then effectively convicting the 17-year-old Rittenhouse without even a trial. And what about this journalist, Tara Dublin? She even thought it was okay to make rape jokes about Rittenhouse when he broke down on the stand this week. Now, the full level of hypocrisy wouldn't be exposed without showing you her approach to others making jokes about rape. Unfortunately, it's not just limited to these 2 fools or even these 2 broad groups of media and politicians. See, the activist class and their enablers are all wandering around the field of hypocrisy with regular excursions into the enchanted forest of stupidity. Let me explain that Rittenhouse has been charged with murdering 2 of these men and shooting the 3rd. Just because they're all reported of criminal records isn't an excuse, but I'm telling you, it does suggest a preparedness for these people to break the law. And the survivor, a guy named Gage Grosskreutz, he's seeking $10 million in compensation, and he took the stand earlier this week. His testimony was a compelling tale of why this entire trial is an injustice. He was asked if he had a permit to carry the gun that he pointed at Rittenhouse's head. Here's his response.
I'm for people's right to carry and bear arms, and that night was no different than any other day. It's keys, phone, wallet, gun.
Did you have a permit to carry a concealed weapon?
I did.
Was it in effect on August 25th, 2020?
It was not.
Yeah, the devil's always in the detail. Anyway, another witness testified that they and Rittenhouse were threatened by the victims. Have a look.
Rosenbaum was right there in front of my face, yelling and screaming, and I would say, dude, back up, just chill. I don't know what your problem is. And he goes, you know what, if I catch any of you guys alone tonight, I'm going to kill you.
Well, another witness who was on the spot put the prosecutor in a very hot spot with some very inconvenient truths.
I mean, you have no idea what Mr. Rosenbaum was ever thinking at any point in his life. You have never been inside his head. You never met him before. You don't know.
I've never exchanged words with him, if that's what your question is.
So your interpretation of what he was trying to do or what he was intending to do or anything along those lines is complete guesswork.
Well, I wish this farce actually ended there. Unfortunately, it continues, even though the prosecution crumbles under the weight of perfidy, suppression, and hopelessness. Here's one prosecutor cross-examining another witness over their evidence.
And we asked if you knew anything beyond that statement.
Correct.
We didn't ask you to change it.
Yes, you did.
All right, this hapless lot even tried to manipulate the law in the courtroom, earning this very stern rebuke from the judge.
Why would you think that that made it okay for you, without any advance notice, to bring this matter before the jury? I was astounded punished when you began your examination by commenting on the defendant's post-arrest silence. That's basic law. It's been basic law in this country for 40 years, 50 years.
Okay, this is a total farce, and everyone involved in this disgraceful prosecution should hang their heads in shame. But it's an example of what we've actually been reduced to, and I don't just mean in America, but throughout the Western world. We now have mob justice led by the media, politicians, and deep state apparatchiks. They destroy characters without compunction. They ignore facts in pursuit of their zealotry. They exploit any opportunity to mislead and deceive if it's going to further their own cause. Frankly, it's a disgrace. And the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse is just the latest public example. I mean, last week, I told you of the Clinton campaign's fabrication of the Russiagate documents against Donald Trump. We've seen the Hunter Biden laptop cover-up by the mainstream media. And the bridge between the Biden family and the Chinese Communist Party? That hasn't seen the light of day, has it? We haven't read much either about the Clinton Foundation fundraising fortunes or Bill Clinton's friendship with pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. What about the repeated contradictions of Tony Fauci? Well, they received scant mainstream media coverage. Nor, for that matter, do the inconsistencies in the memoirs of Lisa Wilkinson or other celebrity wokesters. And don't get me started on the corruption in some of our state governments that goes almost unquestioned by the media pack. But I bring these up because it goes to show how the system is stacked against you and the rest of the normal people out there. As the world changes for the worse, the regular man and woman, you and me, those concerned for their jobs, the well-being of their families, the quality of education for our children, the values and the virtues that have stood the test of time are the real losers in all of this. If we, the people, dare speak up against this stitch-up, we actually become the target for the left's character assassination and risk cancellation. And so while the Rittenhouse trial may seem a world away from the problems we have in this country, it's merely the public face of the battles that we're dealing with every single day. Sure, ours are not about guns or murders, but it is about the power of the establishment working against the interests of the ordinary citizen in favour of furthering their own poisonous narrative. Okay, Kosha Gada is an American businesswoman, managing director of Recastled. She joins us now because she's an expert on this stuff. Now, Kosha, you've been following this Rittenhouse trial. I have never seen an injustice like it. Am I over-egging the pudding here?
No, I think you're spot on. This case has riveted a nation. And as you mentioned, Cory, indeed, much of the world. It's front page news in newspapers all across the Western world and beyond, while millions of people have been live streaming it and watching what's been happening in that courtroom this week. And here's why. It is, as you rightly said, people see this as an illustration of the crumbling of the most venerable institutions known to the free world right before their very eyes. You know, it's a crumbling of the law and order institution, where if you come back to the root cause of this, how this all got started, it was those riots where cities like Kenosha, Wisconsin, and others all across the country were burning last summer. And nobody, in a complete dereliction of duty, nobody really did anything from the leadership class, anything about it. And it remains, a huge stain that people on the country that people are very, very upset about, and it was unacceptable. That led to a situation in this town where people were left to fend for themselves, their own businesses, their own neighborhoods, their own towns, because there was no law and order as the city was burning, which then created this vacuum that then led to the situation that now Kyle Rittenhouse and these victims found themselves in. It's also a crumbling of the justice system, where, I was looking into how long it took the DA to indict Kyle Rittenhouse. He did it in 48 hours before the facts that we're seeing in the courtroom right now, the eyewitness testimony, the video footage, et cetera, had even had an opportunity to unfold. So he just kind of rushed to bring that case and not even consider the possibility that there could be another reason, such as self-defense, which is what looks like is being proved out in the court right now. The jury will determine that. It's also, as you touched on, a crumbling of the media, where now there's this complete collapse of investigative journalism. This kind of story could have been a career-making thing for an investigative journalist to pursue. And instead, you just see this rush to judgment in the court of public opinion and tarring people with all sorts of things. And, the Nick Sandmann case, where another minor famously sued after he was slandered by a bunch of media outlets, and he sued and settled with CNN and the Washington Post. And if Kyle Rittenhouse is acquitted, I think we can expect to see something similar. And then lastly, I would say it's a crumbling of our system of government, where elected leaders, whether it's the president or congressman from the 8th District of New York that you showed there, Hakeem Jeffries, weighing in on a trial that hasn't even unfolded yet and that's supposed to be handled within the judicial system in our separation of powers, is something that the American people still do not look kindly to. And I think this story encapsulates that crumbling across all those institutions, and it's very sad.
Yeah, beautifully put, Kosha. I've got to put this to you, though. The media have done damage. They've destroyed themselves by undermining their own credibility. We've seen the same with the political class who have lied upon lie upon lie, the manipulation of the media, the working in concert against it. We're now seeing the Department of Justice in America, the FBI, manipulated and orchestrated for political ends. What we're witnessing is the honeycombing, the white-handing of some of the most important institutions in the Western world. What could be their possible motive for doing it other than short-term political opportunism?
Yes, that's very tricky. And I think, if I had to pick one word, I would say power, the quest for power that goes to the heart of human nature. And we've seen this in systems and countries around the world. And, I guess there's a version of it even in a country like the United States of America. It's always sort of tyranny is one crisis away. I think that's ultimately the driving force.
Yeah, that's what Ronald Reagan said. Freedom is just one generation away from being extinguished. Kosha Gada, thank you so much for your comments tonight. And we're going to watch this with very, very strong interest over the next week or so.